some of the things they're doing. And again, you guys are members of Total Acre. When you talk about Total Acre, if you haven't heard of them, check them out. That's a membership group that you talk about your network that you work with very closely. Caleb, maybe just give some shine to Total Acre, what they're all about.
Yeah, that's what it's a group of growers that, of course, led by some high yielding individuals in the corn and soybean world. But I like it because it's definitely forward thinking growers that come together, that are very open and willing to share information, on their farm, and trying to put our heads together and see, okay, where does that next yield bump? How can we increase our ROI? And then utilizing tools within software to be able to shine light on some answers.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. Alex, it's not always about champions, right? But there's a lot of champions inside of Total Acre. I seen actually Jake Drozd up in Wisconsin, or actually in Michigan, won. A lot of what's happening, it's a systematic approach, Alex, right? It's great. You have a network of people. So does everybody else, right? But the way you systematically look at things, what we're looking at is an NPR, which is a Total Acre thing, but you're talking about balancing the plant to make sure that if we're short one nutrient, how do we balance it out, right? So maybe just high level talk about the network and what's cool. What do you like most about working with them?
Yeah, no, what they do really well is they do a lot of trials, and they don't BS with the trials. Brian's over it and he's strict, and if you don't meet his guidelines, they're not gonna sugarcoat something. They're not gonna put results up there that are just catered to whoever's giving the most product or paying money or anything like that. I mean, they're true results, and they are what they are. And if some people don't like them, they leave. And for the growers, they really like that because it's pretty transparent. And not only you can see, you may do a trial on your farm, but there's 50 others on those, so you get to see something. If something works 45 times out of 50, it's probably something you ought to look at. If it works, one time out of two on your place, you're probably, well, it didn't really work, so I'm not going to buy it again. But when you see things that are put out that many times across that many different regions and soil types and management types, it'll open your eyes to some products. I mean, it's turned me on to some products that are grower standard practice now that I'd never even heard of before. So that's the cool thing about it. And then, it ranks, the NPR, I think they call it here, is it shows which nutrients or whatever it is that may be your limiting yield factor. And we have to fix it. It's like tell people all the time, it's like a chain. You've got a weak link in that chain, and chain's only as strong as that weak link. And once you fix that one, there's another one that's going to be your weak link, and it's just figuring out which one that is and being able to address that.
Yeah, I think well said. And I think Bryce and Brian would appreciate that. They do run a pretty tight shop. When you start looking at, and Caleb, we've talked about this several times, but it's kind of like Mr. Hula says, is you can't fix what you can't measure, right? And I think that's that systematic approach. In this case here, I've left this slide up way too long, but you can see the reds and the yellows on the right-hand side. This is another Total Acre member. Everybody has access to this inside of Total Acre, but this is somebody else that was using RDX-N. What was kind of brought up is like you talked about, Alex, we see what our limiting factor is at a certain side. On the left-hand side, you can see tissue sampling on the high yield, the average, and then the RDX-N side. What we seen was, if we traditionally would see a deficiency, we would go try to correct that deficiency, and then we'd move that energy in the plant. It's definitely doing something, right? But then guess what? Something else is the matter, right? And we keep moving those energies inside the plant, or moving the nutrients, which is energy, right? Every nutrient has a charge, you guys. And that's what I'd like to kind of get across to producers is if you continue to chase it, it's hard to fix. One of the things, and this is Mark Severson in Illinois, on his RDX-N site here, that again, the tissue sampling is something y'all do, right? Not something that this is a proving ground for y'all. But when he sees green all season long, that tells me that energy is being put to use. The plant can get access to what it needs to and be healthy all season long. So a more resilient plant probably equals more yield, right? Probably equals less nutrients, probably equals more understanding of how that plant's working. So I love this slide.